I'm Tim Casella in Las Vegas, Nevada.
I'm Venezia Fenus in Los Angeles, California.
And I'm Derek Robinson in 29 Palms, California. This is PACTS International TV. Hello, and welcome to this episode of PACTS International TV. I'm Derek Robinson. Today, attorneys Anne-Marie Anderson, Ray Schumann, and Denise Rosado join us to share some legal insights about our cause. And Lewis Scott, originator of Targeted Individual Day, and his Phoenix, Arizona support group join us to speak about this occasion, which is observed every year on August the 29th. First, though, is today's headline story, coming up next on PACTS International TV.
Our headline story tonight centers around the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment, Professor Nils Melzer. As a result of his latest call for inputs from the world community, information from 6 targeted individual organizations are now posted on his website. In late June, the Special Rapporteur on Torture sent a worldwide call for inputs as he prepares for an upcoming speech to the United Nations General Assembly in October. At that time we may have a clearer view of how Mr. Melzer's office is planning to liberate millions of victims of cybertorture across the globe.
Welcome back, and in this segment we chat with a few attorneys around our community who will be sharing some insights about our cause from a legal perspective. First we have Denise Rosado. Denise has been an attorney since March of 2019. She is currently in Texas working on her court case, which is a type of whistleblower case, and she is busily starting her own law firm. Ray Schumann. Ray is the founder of the Legal Co-op, an advocate organization for targeted individuals who are in need of legal counsel to assist them in putting together a case for court. Ray is the eternal advocate, from the homeless in San Jose to abuses of human rights in Latin America to juveniles in Washington, D.C., to legal research and writing for the American Civil Liberties Union. He has been a California attorney since 1999 and proposes putting his experience and skills to work restoring justice. The Legal Co-op will have a fact-finding component to include observers, FOIA and Sunshine Law action. It will have an educational component, helping people organize their cases for maximum effectiveness, and will have impact and test litigation components for those issues that urgently need to be addressed. The Legal Co-op will safeguard our rights from new schemes and new millennium challenges, thereby protecting the rights that protect us all. And Anne-Marie Anderson is an extremely accomplished corporate attorney and a partner in an Arizona law firm. She is a second-generation top 5 graduate from the University of Michigan and president of Phi Beta Kappa Academic Society in the Phoenix area since 2013. She has had 23 years of legal practice, including 2 years as a former assistant attorney general for the state of Arizona. She has appeared in various national business and legal publications, including the Wall Street Journal, Yahoo Finance, Business Week, Cranes, and others. The State Bar of Arizona has twice awarded her its Outstanding Leadership Award, and she currently serves or has served as chairman or president of numerous boards of directors, including the State Bar of Arizona, Securities Regulatory Council, President of the University of Michigan Alumni Association, Vice Chairman of the Phoenix Opera Board, and many, many others. Thanks, guys. Welcome, Emery, to our program, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you, Derek.
Okay, well, I'd like to start with a general question that, that perhaps all of you can answer in some capacity. Now, our community for years and years and years has basically striven to put together a comprehensive lawsuit that would encompass everyone, that would cover all of our issues, that would hopefully address our targeting situation. Is basically the idea of a massive class action lawsuit. Basically, is what is kind of what we've been striving for years, but that's not quite come together. I was wondering if you guys are working on something like that, or what the chances of putting together a class action lawsuit would be.
Well, if nobody else is going to jump in, I'll address just a preliminary thing that people have to understand. And that is that a class action lawsuit is based on common elements shared by all the class members, which means that every single class member would have to have something in common. The community at large has a variety of modalities for illegal wrongdoing. That means there's energy devices, gang stalking, implants, medical technologies being under or misutilized rather. So there's a series of wrongdoing that are somewhat different, but at the same time, they're all suffering from a breach of their rights to privacy and a breach of their rights to due process and being punished and singled out in that way. So I think that's the challenge, Derek, seeking the commonality between them, and that's partly what I think has hampered it. I'm focused more on what the actual rights that we have are, how to protect that basic right that no one should be singled out like this. Nobody. We're all entitled to the protection of the law here. That's what it says on our Constitution. That's what this country was founded for. So that's the one commonality I can see, and I see it across all these cases. So that's one prerogative we can take. That's one avenue we can take, and that's one of the reasons why I focus on it.
You know, those are great points. I've served as plaintiffs and defense counsel on class actions, so I've got a little bit of data directly to work with here. I always urge plaintiffs when they talk about victims of this phenomenon wanting a class to look at Rule 23 of the Rules of Civil Procedure. There's no getting around it, and I'm not saying that's good, bad, or indifferent, but you've got to meet the elements there. And then there's a multi-district panel on class action litigation populated by federal judges who have to approve the class action put in front of them. And there's many classes that do not get approved or the language is certified. So along the lines that Ray was discussing, some of the elements that we have to meet if you go to Rule 23 of the Rules of Civil Procedure, you've got to have an adequate definition of the class. You've got to have commonality of the claims. If the claims are kind of all over the map, you don't really satisfy that element. Typicality, you've got to be able to describe what the typical claims are. Ascertainability, you have to actually put your hands around what these claims are. And then the adequacy of the class action framework is set up under Rule 23 to redress the wrong and provide damages. So that's just kind of a big 10,000-foot overview. Just off the top of my head, I always kind of tell folks, at the early stages to file a class action or file any lawsuit, we probably need named defendants, and that's not as easy as it sounds. I know Ray agrees with me on this. You can certainly add to defendants later, but you kind of can't go in, and we've seen, unfortunately, some really well-meaning victims, very, very hardworking, well-meaning, name everybody under the sun. Maybe they name the president, the Department of Defense, you name it, all the agencies, and I think virtually all of those have been dismissed. You've got to be able to connect up the dots to not just name a defendant, but to actually be able to prove that, yeah, it is XYZ corporation or it is XYZ agency that's involved in this. So I always tell people, kind of what we're focusing a bit on now is how to name with certainty defendants. And then second, we know folks are affected by this, but at this stage, we probably really need expert reports to the extent we can get them. And we do have a number. We've got a number of people, as you all know, that have been scanned. One of our scanners, her reports have been admitted as expert evidence in at least 2 jurisdictions, I believe. I don't have my cases in front of me. So hopefully after claims are established way down the road, that wouldn't be required of everybody. But if you just kind of look up, generally what's required for successful litigation, especially stuff that's kind of this novel or this technical, you generally need named defendants, and you generally need expert reports. So, and that would typically be the case for a class action lawsuit. Another thing I'd mention that the way I describe this phenomenon when I'm talking to people, and maybe it gives some folks hope, is it appears to be really a continuation and possibly an expansion of COINTELPRO. And the plus to that is it's almost impossible to deny that COINTELPRO existed. Why do I say that? There was extensive congressional testimony where I think you even had architects or people involved in COINTELPRO testifying in congressional hearings. So if you kind of explain it like that, and I don't know if there's been any cases filed, I think I knew at one point directly on COINTELPRO, but if you describe it as that, it's a little easier for people to get their mind around. And that's something, an analogy that might want to be drawn in any litigation that's filed. I know that's kind of what's on our mind.
Okay, well, you brought up some point, Emery. MK Ultra, and because of the congressional hearings, MK Ultra and COINTELPRO, those are events. The CIA actually did have a mind control program that operated for a number of years. Those, and it's because of that congressional hearing, the series of hearings, that the CIA's mind control program cannot be denied. So that is like square one for all of us. So what we have to prove, I guess, is what you were saying, identifying, specifically how these technologies are affecting the individual, where it's coming from exactly, and all that kind of thing, which has been very elusive for us. And class action is, as you pointed out, even more elusive, considering all the variables that would be required. Let's see. Let me just ask Ray, since he is busy with his legal co-op, and he is actually more hands-on in terms of working with TIs who have independent litigation. And so, Ray, if you could just tell us how that is going.
Well, it's a hard fight. I have to say that. What is happening is that a lot of the people that are being harassed are actually on some kind of watch list. And that's something that's proliferated. I mean, it's a fashionable thing to have a watch list. By that I mean it's not just a national scope, the National Terrorist Watch List, but a whole series of watch lists that every agency has. And one evidence of that is I was doing a document review with a client here, and I was looking through her documents, and there it is right in front of me. So-and-so is a target of so-and-so agency and has been so since X date. So I was like, I just zeroed in on that, and I said, that is what we've been looking for.
Wow.
The language is there, a target of a certain agency for a certain time. And that's what's been happening. Now, most people don't know this because they're thinking, it's the Air Force or some other thing that they can't quite comprehend why they're on a list. But there's all kinds of agencies, all manner of authority, Some people are on sort of what you would call wellness check lists, where somebody has alleged that they're not sane, they're not well, and that they're a danger. So then in that case, those people are watched by that county component of sorts. They try to make sure that they're not going to imperil anyone. And I have evidence of that. I have a client here, different client, who she just got into a squabble with a neighbor. But the neighbor knew a thing or two about the system. And so what did the neighbor do? He wrote up these flyers saying, you know, she's crazy. She's lost her mind. I know that for a fact. And by the way, she performed an aggravated assault on me. So she, you know, they wrote up these flyers and went through the entire neighborhood with this crap. And I got copies of the flyers, so I know what they said. And what that does is that those two components right there make her a watch list candidate, because she is alleged to be both violent and unhinged. And so she's like a ticking time bomb. And what the technologies are doing nowadays, for example, right here in Silicon Valley, there's companies that specialize in this, to put these people on a sort of community watch list, to constantly interact with them, to find out when the bomb's going to go off. Unfortunately, what I have discovered is that these interactions are not gentle. They are not subtle. These guys are literally hunting people down, going out of their way towards them to try to unhinge them, because it sort of justifies their money, and it justifies the entire system. So that's just a couple of things that I've noticed. Again, the watch list system, a strong component, and we have cases here where we have results. In the case of the defamation case, I went ahead and turned that around from her being a criminally charged defendant under a restraining order because of that defamation. I turned it around to dismiss the restraining order, dismiss the criminal charges, get her a 2-year restraining order against the perp. In other words, turn the table around. And now we're seeking legal fees and civil damages against that person. So it's that kind of thing where it's hard. You're going out from an under position to try to get an advantage, but it is totally worthwhile. I mean, I can't tell you how that's totally an outstanding thing we're doing. Go ahead.
Ray, that you bring up a really important pattern, and Derek, I don't think you meant this, but just to clarify, I've interviewed, it's in the thousands of TIs, and I have helped but not charged. It's well into the hundreds, and I can easily document that. And to Ray's point, one pattern that we're seeing a bit of, although there's no guarantee, is when somebody competent and credible gets involved. I'll just throw out me and Ray, for example. It appears folks don't want to get caught or outed, and they often stop. Now, not always. I was curious to hear Ray's story, that the person or people didn't stop, but are now paying a substantial price because they typically don't want to be deposed, because that can link them potentially to other groups in the community. But I'll just give an example. We had a guy, terrific guy, I've known him for years, electrical engineer out of the East Coast, really horrifically harassed and so forth, house broken into, he's hit, the whole shebang. And I'm just going to kind of conflate here, but they tried to come up with a phony investigation against him. They used the CEO of one of the largest publicly traded defense contractors in the world to file verbal complaints at the police against this victim. All I had to do was I called the mayor of this guy's city, I called his chief of police, and I said, where's your written report from the CEO is complaining, where's your evidence? You showed up at this victim's house and so forth. You don't have probable cause, and so on and so forth. Within 30 minutes, they texted me and said, we have closed all investigations involving the guy you're calling on behalf of. We will not reopen any of them. Here were the case numbers. We are so sorry. We were in the wrong. And they also admitted to me that the CEO of this publicly traded defense contractor had never submitted his complaints in writing, which I think is significant. There's a reason for that. Once he submits that in writing to the police, among other things, I'm often running with depositions and subpoenas. And that defense contractor might have been involved. It's certainly possible in contracts that involve, some of these activities. So anyway, and then kind of as a prologue to that, about a month or so later, that CEO resigned after being at the company for 37 years. So, you know, that kind of involvement can really pay off. What I typically do, and I'm not saying everybody else has to do this, is if I can solve it or help somebody by making a phone call, which is typically the case. Of course, that's not always going to be the case, for sure. I do that, and I do that for people on a weekly basis, as long as they're credible and reasonably nice and respectful, which I know Ray would have the same requirements. Now, there's certainly cases where that would not be enough, and you know, litigation may be necessary, and as Ray described, that's been very successful.
It was something that was, the train was already rolling with this person going straight to hell with it. So I had to fight it that way. But if you can do it informally, that can be sometimes the best bet. And so I completely concur with you that sometimes is a route that you can take.
Okay.
Part of the plus set too is you don't, it's going to be less expensive. You're going to get the same result. You're going to get it quicker. You're not going to potentially be creating negative precedent. Ray generally wins. I generally win. So, you know, don't generally create a lot of negative precedents, but, you know, yeah, that's so, yeah.
Well, that's been like a running joke between Ray and myself lately with the whole winning theme. We keep saying that we're winners. We win. We're in it to win because, you know, we're telling the truth and we're being honest and we really want to help people. And so, yeah.
Absolutely. Hey, Denise, you're a little muffled. Your microphone's a little muffled.
I know. I need to get a better microphone.
Okay.
Is it any better?
Okay, we can understand you. It is a little bit muffled, though.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay,
so, I mean, just to give you guys a little background about me, and Ray knows, because I'm very thankful to Ray and appreciative because he's actually been very helpful and instrumental in helping me with my complaint and moving forward. So I've identified quite a few defendants. Okay, how do I begin? So I'm a lifelong public servant. I've worked for the federal government before I started to attend law school in Phoenix, Arizona. And then I started to observe, well, first when I was with the federal government, I observed some waste of resources and some fraud. And having worked in HR, I observed firsthand retaliation and harassment. And it was unfortunate because I really did see a lot of really legitimate grievances that people were treated, were retaliated against and harassed, because it's easier to just try to silence a subordinate than to try to hold the manager accountable.
Hey, Denise, can you speak up a little bit? Can you speak up?
I think it's muffled, maybe.
Yeah, and maybe if you can get closer to your mic.
Well, my mic is my Bluetooth, so maybe I should, let me see if I get rid of the Bluetooth, if that's better. Maybe let me try to see if the volume. I need to get better equipment. Sorry. Okay, took the earbuds out. Is this better?
Yeah.
That is better. That is better, yes.
Okay, good. Sorry, so to start all over again, I've been a lifelong public servant. I was working for the United States federal government when I decided to leave and go to law school. And one of the reasons I did that was because I observed waste of resources, fraud, retaliation.
Okay, you'll need to speak up, though.
Okay, and so I observed that employees were coming in with legitimate grievances, yet being retaliated against for coming forward. I kind of had a problem with that. And so after going through some of my own issues with commerce and census bureau, I decided to attend law school because I felt like I could serve others better and be a better advocate for folks. So once I arrived at Phoenix, the first law school I attended was called Phoenix School of Law. It later changed its name to Arizona Summit. And very early on, I observed that, not just myself and many other students, that the quality of education there was subpar. And so we went to administration with our concerns, and were retaliated against. The school illegally requested records about me from the Department of Commerce, and the Department of Commerce illegally gave them those records. Hello?
Okay,
Okay,
yeah,
so Denise, is that law school that was cheating lawyers and kind of keeping them down and not letting them practice, basically? Was that law school you're talking about?
Not letting students practice?
Yeah, they just didn't even graduate people?
Well, that's the one that ultimately shuttered.
Okay.
Yes, so that law school, again, vindicating all of the students that came forward with our legitimate concerns about our quality of education, and ABA took its accreditation, and ultimately that school shuttered, which was the second of the third in law schools that shuttered. The third one was placed on, had been found out of compliance, but I think they settled the lawsuit with the ABA. But so 2 out of the 3 law schools funded by Sterling Partners went under. So after the first one, you would think that they'd be on notice and do better, at least try to keep the second one from shutting down. But anyway, retaliation ensued. I was fortunate enough to transfer into another law school, which is actually ranked 25th in the nation. So it was a blessing in disguise. However, ever since then, it's been nearly impossible for me to get a job. I feel like I've been blackballed, blacklisted. I've gotten job offers which were then rescinded even days before my going to start the job, even securing housing and things. A pattern of these, what I called it in cause of action in my complaint was economic interference or tortious interference with economic opportunity. So things like that have happened, and then just hostile work environment. My last position with the ABA was absolutely brutal, the way I was treated for absolutely no reason. So I just felt like I needed to come forward and tell my story and take action. And I know that if this happened to me, then it must have happened to other students. Therein might be a possibility for a class action, because if this did happen to other students, maybe they hear my story, maybe they come forward and they tell their story, and that would make it worth it for me.
okay. Thanks, Denise, for sharing. Okay, let me ask a general question here. One of the first things that people ask me when they contact our organization is, can you place me in contact with an attorney? And usually, as I speak to these individuals, I realize that that most of them do not have evidence to really start working with an attorney as yet. How should TIs prepare to speak to an attorney? Because you have to have a certain amount of evidence so that they will believe you, so that they will listen to you. What kinds of things should we have in hand if we were to see an attorney?
Ray's probably a good one, at least on the boots on the ground type of perpetrators. What I tell people is if they can get an expert, it depends on the kind of damages that they're experiencing. If they're experiencing on the ground stalking and harassment, photographing, videotaping witnesses, that type of stuff. If it's other stuff that an expert report, like an expert scan, could shed light on, to show multiple non-consensual implants emitting frequencies and so forth, that's going to be helpful. But it goes back to what I opened with in this roundtable, where, you also have to kind of link it up at this point, likely to named defendants, and that gets trickier. I'm not going to tell you it's impossible, but it's something that folks need to be mindful of.
These frequency scans are actually tremendously useful, as Anne-Marie's pointed out. I have seen a frequency scan that has a person emitting radio frequencies that are strictly military use. So, you know, I mean, that's not exactly the kind of thing that comes out of Radio Shack. So then you know something's amiss. And I've seen those kinds of reports. I've also seen on the stalking front. So that kind of evidence is, like I was pointing out earlier, you got to get those flyers that they're handing out. You got to figure out who's doing the footwork on the neighborhood. License plates are tremendously useful. I put up some of these pieces of evidence right on my website, thelegalcoop.wordpress.com, and I'll put up the flyers that I find. I'll put them right up there for you to look at. I'll put up the agency listing for a target. I'll put that right on that website. And you can go there and see what it looks like, and then you have some idea, well, I really should be getting something like this. You know it's happening, so how do you get your hands on it? And that's where you have to get some kind of creative work going on.
Right, and my recollection is, and I don't have the cases in front of me, so I could be wrong. I don't think I am, but you know, for example, probably the best person we know of that does these scans, I believe her reports were admitted in a case in Kansas and a case in California. The Kansas case was about 2007, and then the California case was later, specifically admitted by judges to prove targeting. And they were the scan reports with the victims having multiple implants, and the implants were emitting frequencies. And, you know, as Ray has kind of touched on, there is no plausible deniability I'm aware of to explain that phenomenon. You know, the problem with some of the boots on the ground stalking is there can be a little bit of plausible deniability, right? Like, oh, it's a coincidence that these circumstances are happening, but there's no natural phenomenon that I'm aware of that would result in multiple implants emitting, you know, frequencies. Now, the interesting, though, thing with the cases, the two that I just mentioned, is those plaintiffs were victorious against what appear to be local perpetrators, but my understanding is that the phenomenon may not have ceased, which is consistent with our theory that it's not just local folks in most circumstances, that there appears to possibly be something else. You know, whether that's a specific government, military, or defense contractor entity, I can't say. I know a little bit. I actually know more than a little bit about this, but and I think it depends on the circumstances. But I think it's, you know, that's kind of the case. So when we're talking about a potential class action, that's likely who that would be against, is if the dots can be connected, to connect it up to agencies that are perhaps at the top of that food chain, or perhaps issuing those orders. You know, and we've gotten some slight movement, slightly optimistic news over the last couple of years. I think it used to be almost impossible to file a suit against the military. I think they enjoyed mostly immunity, and that immunity was usually extended down to their contractors. And we've seen a couple cases in the last few years where judges are not accepting that, and they are not granting immunity to the defense contractor, and there's been some good results. So to the extent, if there are defense contractors involved in some of this, and that could include a security company, you know, could include a number of organizations, there could be theoretically potential liability there, and not to mention the press that could be associated with it. You know, so that's kind of one theory going on there. There was another. I don't know if you guys saw a case with my colleagues out of Northern California. They had gotten a class certified and won a really important victory just about 2 years ago on behalf of Vietnam vets that had been exposed to Agent Orange, and it had caused, I believe, emotional and psychological substantial damage, and fought, and ultimately got a victory, and there really had not been anything like that before. I think the Agent Orange cases had largely been confined to physical damage, even though there was a suspicion that it was more than that. And I think there may be some parallels between that and what a lot of victims are facing.
I've got a case called Edgewood Arsenal, which you must have heard of, Anne Marie. And that is one of those cases that deals with secret testing. In other words, a secret group of people that are being used as guinea pigs to try and figure out how to inflict more harm with a given weapon or what a medical technology might do. Now, that Edgewood Arsenal case was tremendous. Now, the only relief they sought was declaratory relief, which means we want to be told what you are doing to us. That was basically the gist of that complaint. And it was a long complaint because it's dealing with classification, military immunity, all of that. But nonetheless, that was Morrison Forster out of here in the Bay Area. And they got a battle in their hands. They went ahead, defeated the state secrets and all that other nonsense being foisted, and they won. These veterans were told, they received a letter, you have been experimented upon, get in touch with us. Now, that's the kind of relief that we could use right here in a situation where so many people are experiencing the same type of phenomena, and the authorities are basically turning them away as a pattern. So declaratory relief can be an avenue towards that, and the Edgewood Arsenal case is just like that. And I wanted to add one more thing. Disclosure is sometimes the thing that makes these things happen. Sometimes it's not voluntary disclosure. Well, what do we have right now? It's called Blue Leaks. Blue Leaks is the WikiLeaks for the police. Now, there's an unfortunate aspect about Blue Leaks because Blue Leaks also includes a lot of private information for police, which is, to me, I don't even know why they did that. It's a chaotic move. Anonymous leaked it, so maybe they were trying to get even or whatever, I don't know. But part of what's in those leaks is databases. There's tons of databases, and I went through some of them just to see, and I was able to find people who are watch listed, and their record is on those databases that Blue Leaks leaked. So I've been able to confirm some people who are watch listed from that leak. And this is the kind of thing that happens. It's kind of like the church committee getting that massive leak of paperwork that occurred years ago from Watergate related events. And in that particular leak, we were told COINTELPRO exists. And it was out of a break-in for war protesters. They broke into an FBI office to burn draft cards. And all of a sudden, there's this treasure trove of COINTELPRO sitting right there in a bunch of file boxes. It was that leak that generated all of those committee hearings on COINTELPRO. So right now, we're looking at another leak. We're looking at another set of corruption. And we're looking at another wake of victims that are seeking help. And maybe this is the kind of thing that we need. We need to pour through those records and find out what's in them.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I do recall the case that you're talking about, and that case is very closely aligned with our issues. Actually, a lot of those plaintiffs were target individuals. They had been implanted. Brain implants have the same identical types of scenarios happening with us because they were experiencing the same type of experimentation. So this was the Fort Detrick, I believe.
Yeah, Maryland. Yeah.
Yeah, in Maryland, that case. So I wasn't clear, and you kind of touched on it, exactly what they were suing for, because it wasn't for money. I believe it was for health care.
Right.
That's correct.
Okay. And so they were able to get treated. Is that what happened with the case? I was not clear. The judges, I'm not an attorney, so I was reading the judgment. I was like, well, I really should be an attorney to understand what this is.
Well, the thing about these programs is that they are secret and they are military, and so that's the toughest nut to crack. And, they went ahead and fought this all the way. The state secrets privilege has kept many a claimant out of court because they say, well, we can't talk about that because there'd be some kind of danger to national security. Well, what about the danger to the rest of the people out here? The citizens of this country. That is a countervailing interest, and the courts again and again have ruled that you can only invoke state secrets when it is actual and provable and demonstrable state secret harm that can occur. So in the Edgewood Arsenal, that's right, they sued. They just wanted to be told, did this happen or not? Why do I have these things in my body? Why do I have all these diseases that come from exposure to tropical viruses or toxins and whatnot when I've never been there? Things like that. and they were able to obtain that disclosure. For people like the people in programs that targeted individuals, they want to know what's being done to them. They want to know why it's happening to them. And so that's why it's a good parallel. That's the reason why I brought it up.
It's extremely close to what we are experiencing, in the sense that it was an entirely government program. In this case, these individuals knew exactly who the perpetrators were because they stood right before them. They could name names.
Yeah, that's a little easier, and that's actually the case I'm talking about, and I spoke extensively with Morse Forster. One of the things you left off my resume, but innocently, Derek, is I was one of the youngest general counsels in Silicon Valley history, and so I was general counsel, executive vice president of a technology company up there, and had a lot of those large law firms in the Bay Area were working for my company, and I would hire them when I was general counsel. So I know the gentleman who was lead counsel on that case, and that's who you're talking about. He is a graduate of my alma mater, and I spoke extensively to him throughout that litigation. So I'm trying to be a little veiled on some of my sources and some of my methods. But yeah, that case is very similar. It's a little, I don't want to say easier, because I do think we can crack our nut, but that one, everybody being a Vietnam vet, is an obvious typicality and commonality in terms of defining a class, whereas victims of this phenomenon in general, it's not quite that clean. There could be subgroups where, as Derek mentioned, and I think Ray, as you mentioned as well, that most of those Vietnam vets were just self-described as being targeted. So, there could be then classes potentially within the community based on what their experiences were. And then you would have a better chance at satisfying the Rule 23 elements of typicality and commonality and, all that kind of good stuff. But no, Ray's points out, I think the leaks, because a lot of this stuff, they may want to claim national security interest as a way to shut down the litigation or keep evidence out. But we've seen popular opinion often trump that. Not always, but often. A good example is, what we just saw happen with Harvey Weinstein. It's just my inner circle's personal opinion that Ronan Farrow is almost too good to be true. He's better than out of central casting. And my point to that is, people had tried to get the Manhattan District Attorney to prosecute Weinstein for a decade, maybe longer. And they had not succeeded. I think they were wary of Weinstein's power and his reach. And so they found somebody else shows up. You can't really shut down an investigative reporter. He doesn't have the same constraints and concerns, right, that a Manhattan District Attorney would. And Ronan Farrow was out of central casting and broke that wide open. And I had said for decades, what is the EEOC doing in Southern California? Because we knew this was going on. We were hearing about this. We were seeing substantial evidence. And we're like, why aren't people going to the EEOC? And why isn't the EEOC independently investigating? And for 20 years, we could not figure it out. It appears that was perhaps getting shut down. I don't know that for a fact, but Ray, I mean, it's a little odd that you have those patterns, and not just Weinstein, although he was probably one of the worst violators. But my point with that being that once stuff gets out, so Farrow got it out in national news articles. I think it was in the New Yorker magazine first, and then hit all the national papers. And public sentiment was so loud and so unified that this is outrageous, that one guy is doing this to people, that then it put pressure on prosecuting attorneys to do something about it, right? And so I think that this phenomenon and others could fall along those same lines.
Yeah, absolutely right. This is interesting because it's that kind of public momentum that happens every once in a while, and it's a good national climate for it. It's a good climate. People
I think that's right. Yep.
And right now, look at Denise. Denise is actually a lawyer who is fighting a sexual harassment case occurring within a basically bar administrative kind of unit, right? Or a sub-project of the bar? Imagine that. Lawyers sexually harassing lawyers. I mean, how bad could it get,
That's just one little, there's so many things going with my case that it goes way deep, and You know, it's my hope to bring it, expose all of it, bring it all to the fore, and hold people accountable that are harming people, and it's got to stop. And you know, I think people get sloppy after a while. They start, you know, giving you more evidence and things like that. And I think I call it a desperation attempt. Once they feel like they're getting boxed in, they do these little desperation attempts, and it actually makes it worse for them. And I think what it does for some people like me, it actually empowers people like me to come out stronger. Instead of, you know, being knocked down and staying down, I get up stronger. I get up more motivated, more inspired, more invigorated to tell my story, to come forward. I hope to pave the way for future whistleblowers and other people, and maybe students that have experiences, to come forward and tell their stories. Maybe we can do something, because what has been done is just absolutely outrageous. It's unacceptable, and people do need to start being held accountable. They cannot continue to operate with impunity. We're talking about a government institution. We're talking about—
And Ray, it's not that uncommon. I've seen whenever you get imbalances of power, gender and racial discrimination, harassment is not unusual. I founded, arguably, I guess, the first journal of gender and law in the U.S. alongside the woman who gave us Title VII. You can look up Dr. Catherine McKinnon. There were no Title VII theories of support until she came along, and we founded this journal, and along with another classmate of mine, Julia Ernst. But it's just, you know, it's classic. You get imbalances of power, and which still are in law firms, and you can kind of look up. There's interesting litigation going on now. Actually, unfortunately, Morrison Foerster is a defendant in one. Jones Day is a defendant in another. At one time, Jones Day, I used to be with the largest international law firm in the world, and Jones Day was right up there, and they still are up there. But they are defendants in suits. It's a little bit more based on, I think, less harassment, like Denise, and I'm so sorry that you had to experience that, but little less. It's more denial of opportunities, persistent pay differentials, you know, this kind of stuff. But this goes back to your point, Ray, that, you know, this may be a crest of a wave, in that the environment might be a little bit better, and maybe, or getting better, to listen to and deal with claims like this. I think Black Lives Matter is helping as well. And like you said, to shine a light perhaps on blue leaks, and, you know, getting more information out there. If they are involved in keeping watch lists like this, because I know, as most of you know, there's persistent theories that certainly have some merit, that fusion centers, you know, could be involved to some extent.
Yeah, you're going to love, Anne-Marie, you're going to love some of the stuff that's coming out of Blue Leaks. People have described these fusion centers as being kind of like a sports bar for police. And, you know, a fusion center in Nebraska, for example, is quite different from a fusion center in San Francisco. And so the culture that takes place there, what they like to do, what they consider approvable or likable, or something worthy of persecution, is totally different. And some of the reviews and the information that comes out of there, I mean, these guys will be sitting in a class where they're talking about the N-word and these N-word and these N-words coming out here and that N-word, and we've got to go get these guys. And this is now out on the Blue Leaks database. It's all out. This is what they talk about. And it shows we can't have secrecy and law enforcement operating with that level of impunity, because the result is devastating. It's kind of an advancement for our position here, that some people can be persecuted for doing nothing wrong.
Right. And one other point, you know, we're talking about COINTELPRO is kind of a acceptable way to genericize or present this initially to folks. And you guys probably recognize this, but we've got some pretty strong evidence that a lot of these are multi-generational. Meaning you're, in effect, a whistleblower, or what we've seen even, this is scarier, very effective, particularly state-level employees. They're regulators, and they're tasked with regulating an industry, and they're very effective. They've been asked to back off and not be quite so effective. And they won't. They're doing their job. And not only were they possibly put in COINTELPRO, their small children were, and their small children are adults, and we have credible complaints that these adults now were potentially surveilled, targeted, and tortured throughout their young lives, and are now, continue to be.
Okay, I'd like to look at one aspect of litigation that is of concern to our community, and that is, for instance, people like Richard Kane, those who have been successful in court. They won their lawsuit, and they find that they are still being targeted. And this is something that is baffling to the community. They, you know, it's like, well, I'm going to court, you know, I've got these guys, and they have all the evidence. They actually win their case, but they do not win the part where the targeting stops. And that is something that is confusing to people, because they feel that once they get to court, they're saved. So if you guys would like to address that part of litigation, and how does that work?
Well, I don't know. I've been going first every time, so I won't break tradition here. Well, I'll tell you this, Derek. Once the lawyers can't stop either. You know, you don't have something where you win and turn your back and go somewhere else. These people they're being targeted persistently. It does go on. There are multi-generational victims. So what has to happen is that the community protects its members persistently as well. And this has to mean you have to be ready to step up, take that case up to a restraining order, like I had to do over here in Oakland, where it's like, you know, they're not stopping. Fine, I'm not stopping either. And I went to court this past Wednesday and got a 2-year 527.6 restraining order against this guy who was brandishing guns and playing tough guy with this basic 60-year-old woman. And I said, you know what, if that's what the way they want to go, we'll do it. And originally I wasn't going to look for fees or money on this, but then he kept at it and kept at it. So finally I said, all right, let's go. And I went to the court, and now I'm going to ask for fees. So now this whole kind of profitable, fun game that they like to play, it's going to cost them money. And I think that's the key. You keep at it, stay with those victims, don't let them fall through the cracks, and start costing these people some money. And maybe that's a way to turn it around.
Well done, Ray. That's an understatement. And, you know, another thing you're doing is you might be shrinking the pool of people who want to get involved in that illegal conduct, right? So when they're getting outed and they can't escape, word might be getting out that, is this really worth it, where somebody told me I could maybe get involved in these shenanigans without any liability, and it turns out that that's likely not the case. So it might have a deterrent effect as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the community has to learn to support its providers as well. Look at Anne-Marie's been around for a while. She's a tremendously skilled attorney. Denise, who's just starting out, and I won't mention another guy here, but the bottom line is that we're here to help these folks, and we need the community's support. Derek has been around for a long time providing these support groups, and every other host of these groups. I'm hoping the community will step up for them too and provide, you know, if it be a recurring payment, a small thing, you can maybe not have to subscribe to HBO every month, or maybe not the top tiering channel in cable, but provide some support for those people who are helping you so that they can be around to help you when the time comes. And so that's why the legal co-op, I mean, it's designed that way. Provide a small amount per month, and we'll come out to your aid when you're in such a situation. That's the idea.
I think, again, I think just the existence of the legal co-op, right, and I'm not a part of it, so I've got no dog in this race.
That won't be for long, Anne-Marie. We're
You're great. But just its existence is another deterrent to, you know, this is looking less attractive for boots on the ground perpetrators that might want to be involved in this, just because they see that, you know, something exists where you've got highly skilled, experienced people devoted to this. So, no, that's just fantastic. You know, back to your earlier question, Derek, about what we think, and this is just a kind of working, all the models are always working and kind of changing, but James Walbert and Richard Kane had very experienced lawyers. I forgot who Kane's lawyer was, but Danny Sheehan is arguably our greatest living public interest lawyer. One of my relatives previously had that distinction, according to the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, and may have paid a substantial price for it. But anyway, Danny is terrific and got a great result for James Walber. And then my understanding is consistent with yours, Derek, that it sounded like this antics were continuing. And I addressed it a little earlier in this roundtable where that's what makes us think it's, obviously not just a localized phenomenon in many of these cases, that it is something more significant, and that there's a few models as to what could get people on a potential list of what is more significant. We've mentioned a few. Could be multi-generational, could be non-consensual lifetime experimentation. I think Robert Duncan has mentioned there's 160 odd sub-projects of MKUltra that involved a variety of experimentation. A lot of it not crazy sensational sounding stuff, like potentially testing for allergies in multi-generations, but that stuff can get you in there. Litigating against a local business, that sounds like it could be part of what Denise is experiencing. We've heard allegations in the past, you certainly hope it's not true, but that the CIA may deem as part of their role, not just protecting and promoting U.S. interests abroad, but also here at home, and that potentially that broad definition they may include being if you're a threat to a domestic U.S. business, and a threat means exercising your legal rights. It's not like you're filing a lawsuit without citing to a statute, right? So you're exercising your legal rights. Potentially that could get you on the list. Another thing that's a little encouraging along that line is, I don't have the name of the case in front of me, but it looked like it was almost impossible to sue our intelligence agencies. And I think it was the good people of Guatemala, I know it was a Central or South American country, sued the CIA for really gross activities that occurred where they live, likely on behalf of, I believe it was Chiquita Banana or Dole, I think it's Chiquita Banana, filed suit. Nobody thought that they would win, and my understanding is U.S. intelligence agencies were participating in this horrific activities to protect and promote U.S. corporate interests there. And ultimately, the folks from, I think it was Guatemala, they won. So judges are recognizing limitations to this overreach, and I think the overreach often has to be secret to get away with it. I think if it get exposed, like in the example of the Guatemalan case I just described, I think it doesn't work. I think it slows or puts a stop to it.
Okay, and I guess last but not least, I would like to kind of bring in the idea of the United Nations, since this has really made an impact on our community. Nils Meltzer, as you guys realize, is a brilliant international lawyer. He is taking on this role of special rapporteur for torture, and he is. I follow his work on social media. He is really an advocate, daily. Advocating for those victims around the world who are just suffering just unimaginable atrocities. And so he has agreed to take on our case, and it has it's kind of in tandem with Julian Assange's case. We have some similar parallels, and so we were able to get grafted into this no-touch torture category because of his involvement with Julian Assange, which is really a divine blessing as far as I'm concerned. So as an attorney...
Excuse me, Derek. What was his name?
Nils Meltzer. He's the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture. Yes?
Oh, no, I was just spelling the name for...
Meltzer. Thank you.
I think it's Melzer. I might be wrong.
That's correct.
That sounds right.
So as a result of that liaison, which kind of came about through Liliana DeLuca Connor and Magnus Olsen and Henning Witt in Europe, our colleagues over there in Sweden and Poland, they were able to meet directly with Mr. Meltzer and speak to him about our issues. It turns out he actually knew about, he had been briefed about our particular phenomena. So he is preparing to pursue some help, some avenues for help for the TAC community, which is it's just an amazing turn of events the past few months. So he's an international lawyer. So I guess he will be approaching this first of all from the standpoint of international law. Now, would that be does the United Nations do they make resolutions or do they have legislation? Do you guys know if for sure about that?
Oh, well, that goes by a treaty, Derek, and
Okay.
yeah, a treaty with the United States and every other signatory to that treaty. And we have that. We have signed on to it. It's the Convention Against Torture. It's a series of treaties, but that's what the general umbrella might be called. And people will find this of interest that in that Convention of Torture, in the very definitions of it, which is Article 1.1, that's the start of it. It says, if you take coercion against a person, intimidation against a person, and you have either an official action, meaning a police officer or a government employee, or, and this is the very important or, acquiescence by an official individual of government, meaning that the cop knows about it, or the government official knows about it and they turn their back, that is torture. And that's what Nils Meltzer has jurisdiction to investigate worldwide. That's something that people thought, again, this was a godsend, like you said, because he is looking into this aspect where people are being tortured all over the world. And he's got patterns where not only are there medical technologies, emerging information technologies, gang stalking, all of these things combined to frighten and torture people in their own homes. And he says that there are voyeuristic networks, in other words, networks of basic, almost television, where people log in and they watch people being tortured real time for sadist entertainment. So what we think about that is, okay, people, I guess they don't want to pay for HBO, they don't want to watch Dexter anymore, so they tune in to some innocent person's life and are able to affect their environment, are able to inflict pain. And I do have a case here where one of my, the people that I talked to has told me that they know the network that is being used to transmit those channels with that filth and that disgusting sadist entertainment out, especially to Asia, apparently. A real kick out of torturing Americans in their own home. So I think this is a scandal of basically civilizational dimension. It's the kind of thing that changes things forever. And Nils Meltzer is on that. He talked about the voyeuristic networks. He talked about the tools that are being used. And this is happening right now, right in front of the United Nations General Assembly pretty soon. I put a link to Mr. Meltzer's report right on my, my WordPress account. That's thelegalcoop.wordpress.com. You can go there and download Mr. Meltzer's report that talks about all these technologies and all these things being done to people for the jollies of some sick people, abroad and probably some here too. So I just, thank you for bringing that up. That's a critical component, a very timely thing going on right now.
Well, yeah, it's has galvanized our community. This is an individual who has been assigned, actually assigned the task of looking into cases of torture. And fortunately, we were in a position to where he has recognized our situation as actual torture. And it has first time it's ever happened in our history. So this is a very important development. I was also looking at this legalistically as to how he would approach this. Would he, and in his letter, his article, Magnus Olsson kind of hinted at this, that he would be working with police departments at the federal, state, and local level to kind of give them information about how these networks are developed, and some information, maybe equipment, for how they can go about prosecuting these cases. And this is something that's going to require lots of training for police departments. And I feel like they are willing, there are police that I know of that are willing to apprehend these individuals, but there is not the legal underpinning for them to do so. So if that were, start to develop as a result of this UN initiative, that could really turn the tide in terms of our targeting. And it's I think the police, the community has a certain idea about the police, but I feel that if they are given the right legislative underpinning, if they are given the right equipment, training, support, I think that they will very aggressively do their job.
I agree with you, Derek, and I just wanted to point out that in addition to creating a sort of public backlash when this information does get out in earnest, it is something that will dry up the money train, because these networks won't be able to basically send this torture material out as readily. I mean, these are criminals, and they're operating sort of under the sub rosa layers of things, but they'll get some attention pretty soon. And they're using satellite facilities to transmit this material out. So if the money starts to dry up, it's going to be a lot more difficult to get out there and do these kinds of things to people. That's the way I think the usefulness of it. Not to mention that the United Nations has a court that people can resort to if they're not able to get remedy within their particular jurisdiction. In other words, if they exhaust all remedy and they're still being basically hassled and tortured, they may seek remedy in the United Nations, quite possibly bringing attention to the situation as well.
Well, yeah, that is a possibility. I feel that once this criminal activity becomes more known in this country and globally, that police departments, I feel that they'll be able to handle it. It's going to be a matter of TIs working in conjunction with police, community groups, city council. The ones that we have talked to, the city council members, have been very supportive. Once they realize that this illegal and very lethal, in some cases, criminal activity, is actually happening in their community. So I think that we'll get a lot of support once this UN reports, comes forward.
Get back to one of Ray's, an earlier point he made about supporting the community and service providers, and I think he was talking about certain financial models, which I think is absolutely correct and appropriate. But also, I know this has maybe been on some recent calls with victims to remind folks to be as positive as possible, and trying to think of a tactful way to say this, not going at one another. There's a lot of good folks in the community who do not do that, and it's appreciated, and it's definitely noted. It's very obvious. And for some of the folks who do, it usually doesn't wind up so great for them, but it makes it a lot more difficult to provide assistance, when that stuff goes on. So just remind people to try, and if they don't enjoy somebody in the community, they should just not interact with them. That's a lot more effective than potentially trying to go at the person.
Yeah, hey, that's something that the community can really help build this whole thing for all of us, to be there for you. Denise is somebody that I met through Kathy Meadows, and she's a person that's worked with TIs for many years. And so, this is the kind of thing that happens. Here's an attorney that I probably would never have met. And she is now coming out for TIs and trying to get a firm together to build some kind of mechanism to help people. And that's all community building. That's trying to keep the peace, trying to go along and get along within that beleaguered group so that things can happen, you know. And so maybe that's right. Just be more positive towards each other, help each other out rather than tearing each other to pieces.
Right. Well, I agree. And that's something that, and Terry Brewer in the community, he has been really championing this, this idea, going on conference calls, speaking to participants about cooperation and you know, not participating in all the drama, et cetera, et cetera. So, so I really appreciate you guys being here with us today. The segment, the attorneys, these are those in our community that we look to for legal guidance, and Ray's Legal Co-op, which is up and coming. That promises to be really something beneficial for the community, for those that are seeking legal remedies for their particular situation. I think what he's doing is extremely important and much needed for many in our community. As I mentioned, just about every new contact with our organization, the first question that they have is, you know, do you have attorneys? Can you recommend someone that can help? We want to go to court and to settle this. But I think that what Ray is doing is an avenue, a very effective avenue for those seeking legal redress. It's not as easy as people might think, especially when they first come to our community. So I think that an organization that will help guide them through the system is what is really called for those in our community.
Thank you, Derek. Can I point out that it's a whole bunch of people, including Anne Marie right here. I've talked with her. She's helped me. She's helped informed the goings on in the community. It includes Denise, who helped me address and help a person in Arizona who I can't give legal advice in Arizona, but Denise can. And so, you know, and Anne-Marie can. And there's people all over the country that can just, I mean, this little organization here that you see, it's not a big deal. Trust me, this is grassroots and, you know, very small time. But what we're doing is using connections with people, trying to get people to help one another, just like you said, Anne-Marie and Derek. And that's what it's really all about. There's no fancy pant thing going on here whatsoever. So I thank you, Derek, for that and reminder that this is about community building. I hope that the members of the community can see that there's professionals trying to help them, that there's people coming out and taking fire for them too, and that maybe just a regular monthly payment, a small time thing that they can do, $5, $10. Send it to you, Derek. Send $5, $10 to me, to Denise, and Anne Marie. If you've got a website, I don't know that you need one, but okay. But just those people that are out in the front lines like us, we need your help in the community as well to keep things going and going strong. Thank you.
And that's your point where you've only been at this, less than a year, Ray, and you've already built a network with a number of lawyers in different states. And then next time we chat offline, I've got some other ideas of folks who I think you could add to that network in the Northeast, who'd be willing to provide the legal advice because they practice there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Emery. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks guys. Once again, Amory Anderson, Ray Schumann, who has a legal co-op, and Denise Rosado are the attorneys that have been with us during the segment, and appreciate your guys' participation.
Thanks, Derek. Nice to see you, Denise and Ray.
Bye. Maybe I'll hit you up.
Thank you all.
Yeah, I hope so. Bye, guys.
Bye.
My name is Constance. I am a part of the Phoenix, Arizona TI group.
I'm Lewis. I'm as well part of the Phoenix TI group.
My name is John. I'm part of the Phoenix TI group.
August the 29th is a very important day. We remember this day as Martin Luther King, "I had a dream" speech that he said so many decades ago. It is still important to our life. I have a dream, as well as Martin Luther King did, to free us from tyranny, cyber torture, directed energy weapons, no remote control, and everything that they are damaging us as TIs with, and millions of people in America, as well as globally. This is a very important day for us. And if you're a TI, it should be an important day for you. I am responsible in our group. The baton has been passed to me to be a support group person, leader. We have a support group here. We're going to be doing our rallies from here, and we're going to be walking down a very busy street. We're going to be doing speeches. The microphones and speakers will be turned on so people can hear other people's stories. I believe that other people's story is very important to hear, because we are all in this together, whether we know it or not, whether we want to be or not. And that's why TI Day is a very important day. August the 29th, we will be starting from here at 9. We will probably be leaving at 10. Lewis?
And we'll be marching and talking and speaking and holding up our flyers and our signs, standing together and letting people know about the psycho torture that they're doing.
So join us on August 29th, 2020. Come on down here if you're in the Phoenix area. It'd be great if we can have you here and help us give your testimony, share your stories. We can give you support, maybe give you some ideas to help you reduce the harassment or the torture that you experience every day. I myself have been a TI since around 2005, and we've developed all different types of countermeasures that can help you reduce illegal entries, monitoring B2K, possibly even do weapons. And of course, give us support. There'll be some food and some drinks here. We'll have a speaker set up. We'll have a microphone so you can share your story and tell everybody about what you've been going through, raise awareness. A great thing. So I have a conference call on Wednesdays, 3:30 Phoenix time, and it would be great if you guys can call. Anybody is welcome. 605-313-5111, and access code 641496 with #sign. And call in. Everybody's welcome. Share your story. We have a lot of TIs, a really good group of TIs there, and you can share your story, and we can give you some ideas and some support and all those different things.
Yeah, so it'd be pretty cool, really nice and sweet to, have what we're doing is really cool and it's really nice, and this is what we're doing, and this is what we've been doing for a long time too. So if you guys ever heard about our speech rallies that we were doing before COVID hit, we were doing that about every week actually, and going out and speaking to people every day and handing out flyers and information and coming across new fellow TIs that didn't even know that there was even a community that existed. So, Phoenix is a pretty big city, and there's lots of people. There's a lot of information.
And a lot of the people that we were able to talk to had the privilege to talk to. I have seen them. They have came to me and hugged me and kissed me. They want to stand by me, as well as the other members, because they don't understand, just like millions of Americans don't understand that everything that's going on in this world is a big possibility. It's going on with a lot more people that we even know or have never met or heard from. It is an important day, August 29th. We did that for how long? About a year?
Oh, a long time.
Every Saturday.
Lots of work.
Sun, heat, rain, freezing. I remember one time we all had gloves blowing on our hands. It was so cold. It's important that we as TIs stick together.
So, well, we got our coffee in the morning, so every morning we went out and got our coffee.
And our donuts.
Donuts.
Don't forget the donuts.
That's right.
So we are the TIs. My name is Constance.
I'm Louis.
I'm John.
We're the TIs from Phoenix,
Arizona.
Arizona.
And that concludes our program today. We'd like to thank our special guests, Anne Marie Anderson, Ray Schumann, and Denise Rosado, and Louis Scott, John, and Constance in Phoenix, Arizona, for visiting with us. We appreciate everyone's information and dedication and hope they'll all be joining us again soon. Please take a moment to give us a like if you enjoyed our program, and click our subscribe button to be informed of upcoming episodes. Now for myself and all of us here at PACTS International TV, thanks for watching.